Brains, a podcast that has been hungry for like a week, like physically hungry, not metaphorically hungry, just hungry. My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah, here we are. Lori's here too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
I'm all right.
Lori's all right. Tonight is Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025. Here on a Wednesday because of the vagaries of our very busy spring youth sport schedule. You have a good week so far, Abe? Anything fun over the weekend?
Nothing fun. Relatively quiet weekend.
It was Easter.
Oh, that's right. It was the Good Friday and the Easter Sunday thing. There wasn't the firing that I anticipated, but I'm going to give it a few more days. And I watched a lot of basketball playoffs.
What's that fucking dude's name? I can't
Mike
come
Waltz.
up with his... Mike Waltz, that's right.
Yeah. He'll be gone at some point. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, at some point.
Yes.
No.
It's like that whole Queen business. It took a couple of years, but...
Your Easter
Before
predictions,
next Easter.
which I'm sure are a reaction to Trump calling for COVID to be over by Easter. You're frequently using Easter as your deadline for things. It's sort of like the new number 11 in Abe land.
Perhaps.
But yeah, it didn't come to pass. I say that I'm hungry because I still can't feel the bottom half of my face for the most part. And I haven't been able to really chew food. I've been eating like soups and protein shakes, smoothies and whatnot, and scrambled eggs. But like I don't know if it's just a psychological thing, but I can't seem to get full on those sorts of foods. Like it's not satisfying the I ate a meal and now I'm done part of my brain. I'm not sure how to fix that.
Even if the calories were equal to what you were consuming
But
before.
they're not.
They're probably not.
Right.
Like I'd have to eat a whole box of soup or whatever, a whole...
A whole square of soup, as you called it to me once, and in a mean way.
Yeah, those,
You're an idiot.
The Tetra Pak soups, those long rectangles, the ones that
a box of soup.
Yeah, sure.
Like a carton of soup that when I had the same surgery, I asked him to get, and he acted like I was fucking crazy.
I'd never heard
and
anyone
stupid.
say a
You
box
had.
of soup. I don't think I had. I think that was new to me, a box of soup. But I learned and
Yelled at me. There's no such thing as a square of soup.
I learned.
Yeah, I know. I didn't say square of soup.
I learned and I grew. And now I know how to find a box of soup.
Yeah, the more you know.
It still doesn't fill me up, though. It's very unsatisfying.
Fucking vegan. What do you expect from it? You should be eating protein shakes all the time.
But even that is like, it just makes me feel like, when I get full from a protein shake, you just feel like floaty and stupid. Like you just feel kind of nauseous if you drink too much of a protein shake.
Well, have you tried eating food?
Yeah, I've been eating soft, so we got
It's been a week now, so
it's been a week.
it's about the right time to really eat food again.
Yeah, but the problem is that I keep biting my bottom lip because I can't feel it, and then it swells up and I bite it again. The
Okay.
problem is the numbness, not the concern about the fucking tooth surgery. Like it all sucks, is what I'm saying. I just want crunchy things. Like crunchy foods are an enormous part of my diet.
Yeah.
It's very important psychologically to me believing that a meal has happened is that there's some texture in there.
Sometimes he needs to chew loudly in order to be satisfied.
What?
You've gotten better about it, but you used to eat chips like Calvin eats chips. Just put there's like...
You got some salsa on a chip. You better get into that fucking chip. Can't softly approach the salsified chip.
You can just bite it and chew it in your mouth. You don't need the air mixing in there.
How many days do you think you are away from back to that?
I don't know. I want my face to feel like my face again, and that.
Maybe it will once you use it in a normal way.
Well, I exercised for the first time today in a week. I mean, I'd walked on the treadmill at a very leisurely pace for the last few days, but today I finally went back to doing my push-up routine, which felt good because I felt so fucking soft after a week of not doing any push-ups. And when you feel soft and you look at yourself in the mirror, you become just doubly disgusted. Like I'm spent a whole life disgusted by my physical presence in the world, to be perfectly frank. No big deal. Probably don't need to investigate that any further. But when I'm not exercising and I'm feeling emotionally and psychologically soft, the body becomes even more offensive to me.
It would have to be mostly psychological, right? I mean, can you lose that much gain in 1 week, right?
I don't know.
No.
You read those things on the internet often, or go to like New York Times, and they tell you about exercise and stuff. It's like as soon as you stop exercising, you're dying.
Yeah.
Like it's every single one. It's like, oh, you've exercised every day for 7 straight years, and if you skip 3 days in a row, you're just fucking ruined.
That's especially true if you spend 2 hours a day exercising. Like if you just be a normal person.
Why you say that? I do not spend 2 hours a day exercising.
If you say I'm going to go exercise, the time from then to getting in the shower is 2 hours.
Yeah, when you're around and you can deal with those fucking kids, totally fine. Take my time. I'm going to go exercise, and then I spend 30 minutes picking out what to listen to while I'm exercising. Then you might catch up on whatever's going on over on the news sites, just in case something happened while you were picking out what you're going to...
So you're just saying you're bad at time management.
No, I'm saying that on a Saturday when I'm going to go exercise and there's nothing on the back end of the exercise that I need to worry about, I'm not going to...
There's me on the back end of the exercise.
Yeah, but there's no, like, time obligation thing we're worried about.
Yes, there is. It's obligated to spend time with me.
Yeah, that's psychotic. Like, we're going to get to spend time together regardless. Anyway, I cannot be sated is what I'm saying here, Abe. I'm a man absolutely unable to currently be sated.
You know, since you're biting yourself because of your numb situation, why not just power through and start eating the crunchy stuff anyways, right? You're already doing damage.
That's what I'm saying. You're just not doing it.
No, I don't want to. So I haven't because I don't want to also tear open the wounds that the monsters
But now
at
it's
the
been a week,
dentist
so you
office
won't.
opened up in my skull.
Okay.
And yeah, also, like, there's concern that, like, if I really just start going to town on something, I'm going to bite right through that fucking lip, you know? Like, who knows what's going to happen next time. Got to be careful.
You're being a wuss.
Anyway, we should probably talk about the bullshit going on in the world rather than the contents of my belly. Let's start where you started us, with the Mike Waltz and Pete Hegseth and Signalgate. We've got Signalgate 2 ongoing now for the last few days. New York Times, I think, initially broke the story that Pete was a frequent user of Signal for disseminating sensitive military intelligence, including on a group chat that included, like, his wife and brother or something like that, like family members and personal lawyers, like basically his inner team. I'm sure that you look at Pete Hegseth in the face, you're like, you know, he's a guy who walks around talking about his team, and it's really just his friends and his wife, right? That's the sort of piece of shit Pete Hegseth definitely is.
Well, you do want to surround yourself with people you trust, you know.
If I was ever in a position of some moderate amount of leadership, and I looked around the room at my friends and family and said, I really appreciate you guys being on my team here, I would be a monster, right? I'm the bad.
That's because you wouldn't ever view us that way.
In the story that I'm telling about this individual who says that, that's the bad, clueless, full of himself protagonist, right?
Right.
This is a bad guy.
Right.
Anyway, he was texting in similar fashion on the Signal chat, apparently, and now everybody seems to think it's time for Pete Hegseth to go, with the exception of Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump, which are, as it turns out, the only two people that matter.
There was a story that was floating around, like, you know, these sources say the White House is, like, starting to plan for a replacement for the defense secretary. It should be noted, Mike Waltz, who should have resigned by now, was not part of the second incident, right? The second one is all Hegseth and his people. And so it seems like he's kind of fucking up in a way where it's kind of embarrassing and under...
Well, he's also the one who said the bad things. Like, Waltz included the wrong guy, but so what?
And he's also fired a bunch of people in his inner circle, at least at the Pentagon, because he believes that they're the ones leaking information to the press, this incriminating information. And he thinks that they're out to get him, which,
Right, and somebody else in his inner circle wrote a op-ed over the weekend, I think Sunday, for Politico, who's like, I think Pete Hegseth is fucking awesome, and he's terrible at this job and needs to go, which is pretty funny. But like, I think that same guy was one of the authors of the "Let's Take Down the Websites" on the DoD website that I find offensive personally because there are black people on them.
Right.
Like they pulled down the Jackie Robinson page because it's like this must be DEI. This thing that we have about Jackie Robinson.
Right.
So it's MAGA true believers who are upset about Pete Hegseth, with the exception of Trump, who only hears from Pete Hegseth that every time he goes on TV, he talks about how this is just the mainstream media and a liberal Democrat conspiracy to try to take down the president, and that they're not really coming after him; they're coming after Donald Trump and using him as the point of attack there, and that therefore Trump getting rid of him would just be caving to the mainstream media and the Democrats. So he can't do that.
What does it mean when something says the White House is considering something, but not Donald Trump?
That the journalist was in talks with someone within the administration who they believe they can say counts as the White House.
It's just interesting.
Right. Yeah,
whenever it's not Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It's the White House.
I wonder if there's like some sort of formal like the AP style guide for like attribution, because sometimes like seeing, somebody close to the president's thinking, or like a senior administration person, but this time it's just the White House. Oh, the White House said it. Okay. But I think that the only reason why he's still sticking around is to, I guess, save face, or just to kind of push back against you would be giving one to your political adversary, opponent. But like under normal circumstances, like under a different, in a different administration, he would have been long gone. I mean, he wouldn't have been selected. I mean, if you go back to after the November elections, a lot of names were floated for different spots, and like Hegseth was immediately like, whoa, this guy's not qualified. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard raised some eyebrows, Kash Patel at the FBI also. But Hegseth was also like, why is the Fox News Weekend Friends guy like leading the Defense Department? Like, it didn't make sense. And like 3 months into it, he's already been in 2 different fuck-ups. And he seems like very like he rattles easy. Like he even like during this weekend's what should be like a very friendly Easter, bring your family, everybody have fun kind of thing at the White House. He's like attacking the press, like, because he's like,
you're talking about when J.D. Vance killed the Pope.
Yeah, that too. But like he seems like he rankles easy, and like this is 3 months in. Like,
well, you know why? If your wife wouldn't leave your hip pocket for more than 5 seconds at a time, and you're trying to run an entire the Defense Department, the largest military in the history of the world, you'd probably be rankled pretty easily too.
Maybe, perhaps.
Apparently, there's a Daily Mail article that I'll make sure is in the show note, where the old ball and chain just won't leave his side for like 10 fucking seconds because clearly she does not trust him. With good reason.
Yeah.
This is a man who, while married to his high school sweetheart, got his soon-to-be second wife pregnant, with whom he had 3 children, and whom he cheated on with his now current wife. So one could understand why she would want to keep him close.
Although, if you're the defense secretary, you would have plenty of occasions to say, honey, I got to go into this top secret meeting, something about
right.
the Houthis.
I'm going to be in the skiff.
Some sort of Houthi event. I'll be right back, and then just fuck off for a few hours.
We're going to pretend that the fucking bathroom is the skiff. Now leave me alone for 7 fucking minutes. The bathroom is a skiff.
Which it could be, like it's like whatever plane the president's on is Air Force One. That's what it is. Whatever room I'm in is a skiff.
How often do you think he changes the password? Or do you think that's a no-no, too? Anyway, this Ullyot guy, I don't know how you say his name, but it's John Ullyot. So I'm going John Ullyot.
Let's go with that.
Is that like, where's Chewbacca from? Wookiee? Is that Wookiee?
Is he from Wookiee?
No, that last name sounds like it's in Wookiee.
He is of the Wookiees.
Yeah. Sounds like a Wookiee sound.
I wanted to read from that Politico op-ed that I mentioned that Ullyot wrote. The building is in disarray under Hegseth's leadership. Fortunately, I was not a victim of this purge of his senior leadership. I am a longtime backer of the secretary. In December, with his Senate confirmation in jeopardy, I wrote an opinion piece arguing strongly that he was the best man to shake things up at a Pentagon in need of serious reform. A month later, Hegseth invited me to stand up and lead the Pentagon public affairs operation for his initial time in the building and then possibly take on another position in the department after that. We accomplished a lot together, including bringing new, largely more conservative media outlets into the Pentagon press space and ensuring the public understands Trump's commitment to rebuilding our military after 4 years of drift under Biden and Lloyd Austin. Last week, a month after leaving my public affairs role, I respectfully declined the Secretary's generous offer for a new position and informed him of my decision to leave the department, wishing him all the best. I value his friendship and am grateful for his giving me the opportunity to serve. I salute his leadership in helping the President make America strong again. Yet, even strong backers of the Secretary like me must admit, the last month has been a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon, and it's becoming a real problem for the administration. In classic fashion, if you get to the yet or the but, you can ignore the 4 minutes of fellatio that preceded it.
Right. And I guess
does this guy think that he's going to remain friends with Pete Hegseth after saying that he's utterly unqualified and that his last 3 months here running the Department of Defense has been a total chaos and a complete clusterfuck?
I guess this is like to establish credibility. Like even I'm saying this and I'm like on his side. Like it's not exactly the same, but like George Clooney in the summer where he was like, hey, I'm a big donor to the Dems and I love Joe Biden, but holy shit, I was I talked to him like last month and he was out of it. Basically like building credibility so that you can then say you need to step aside.
The president deserves better than the current mishegas at the Pentagon. Great use of mishegas. Given his record of holding prior cabinet leaders accountable, many in the secretary's own inner circle will applaud quietly if Trump chooses to do the same in short order at the top of the Defense Department. As usual, and this also applies to what Trump has been saying recently about Jerome Powell, although he has walked that back in the last day or two, where the leader of the Federal Reserve, I think Trump called him an idiot, or like called him very unfortunately stupid or something like that. Like he's a real dummy.
Right. Even though he installed him, this
was a Trump appointee, right? Yeah. When was that? 2018, I think. So
around. Yeah.
He's got a couple of years left on his term of service. Of course, Trump can't get rid of that guy. Anyway, what Ullyot is getting at here is that he's held prior cabinet leaders accountable. And I suppose what he's talking about is like, I don't know, Jim Mattis and what was that Secretary of State's name? The guy from Exxon.
Rex Tillerson?
Rex Tillerson, who called him a fucking moron. Yeah. The holding the former guys accountable, not Mattis. Who's the other one? The Happy Warrior guy. HR McMaster.
Puff and stuff. Yeah.
Boy, that Donald Trump, it's just tough, guys. It's he's just doing his best out there. That's what our president is doing. That's some HR McMaster for you, Mr. Positivity. The point that I'm trying to get at here is those when really holding those leaders accountable. Trump has not been a guy who's just like proudly firing people and then standing by it. Usually he just gets really annoyed with people and they get increasingly annoyed with him and then they part ways. And then in the aftermath of those things, it's always Trump talking about what a complete disaster this person was. Right. Even though these were people that Trump personally selected to help him do this thing that he's trying to do. It's always that Trump cannot fail. He can only be failed. Right. Even by the the people that he is explicitly bringing in to his side. So if Hegseth is going to be gone at some point in the next few days to week or two. Who knows? It will not be much longer after that first tweet that announces that he's leaving, that he starts referring to him as what a dummy he was and how worthless Pete Hegseth was. Because, of course, Trump never made a bad decision in his life. It's only the other people who have failed him.
I'm trying to find what the record is for like the shortest tenured defense secretary, like without like not like an acting capacity, right, or somebody got promoted to a different position. I think you have to go back like 80 years. Somebody like lasted for like almost a year or barely a year. And so, like, this would be up there if they got rid of him like this summer. But it seems like hard to imagine he'll survive a whole year at this pace. Because, as you were reading off from the article, I mean, most of the stuff the public knows are just the signal fuck-ups, But apparently, like, there's a lot of dysfunction at the Pentagon because of his shaky leadership, right? So there's probably a lot more that we don't know about.
Right. And this is the Olliott guy. This is from another Politico article. Olliott defended the agency after the Pentagon took down dozens of military web pages in a purge of diversity content in March, including a story about baseball legend Jackie Robinson's service. And the only explanation for that is like, oh, black guy must be about diversity, right, and you better get rid of it.
Yeah, basically it's like any sort of, woman must be, black must be. It can't be like a merit thing.
And I'm sure, as has been pointed out many, many times before, when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, it wasn't because of woke stuff, right? Like he was way better than the vast majority of the players in Major League Baseball at the time, and then they finally let him play.
Right.
Anyway, you made Easter predictions about our boy Mike Waltz, who seems to have skated entirely.
Yeah, he's smartly kind of kept a low profile since.
Will Trump do away with Pete Hegseth, or is he going to ride this out and just see what happens in the summer?
If he were to somehow right the ship, at the Pentagon and then stop doing the signal stuff, like maybe he could survive, but like based on the information we have now, in just like barely 3 months, he has done all of these fuck ups. You would think that he's going to continue to fuck up, and maybe in the summer he'll have fucked up again. And at that point, like everybody will say, it's just not worth the effort. Let's just get rid of this guy, bring somebody on board, so that we're not constantly having to defend him, and we're not getting much in return. It's not like he's like some like unique mind that like you need to kind of tolerate some of his shittiness because he's like so good at something. You can just plug anybody in.
Right. All right. Did you watch the Sunday shows this week, Abe?
I watched Face the Nation.
Face the Nation, as did I think all of the Sunday shows, interviewed Senator Maryland Chris Van Hollen.
He was everywhere. Super
everywhere, including in El Salvador, just a few days earlier, where he sat down with the deported illegal immigrant who was not supposed to be deported to El Salvador. I think I said a couple of weeks ago or last week that this Abrego Garcia fella, who was an illegal immigrant here, but who had been permitted to stay here, I think, like he went through some process, and it's not exactly it is a immigration court process of some kind or another, and they ruled that he should not be deported to El Salvador, and like explicitly said, don't send him to El Salvador.
Right.
And this was in 2019, I think, or something like that, a few years ago. And then the Trump administration comes along and sends him to El Salvador. And of course, there's been court orders that we facilitate the return of this guy back to the United States, and the Trump administration, as we talked about last week, is like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Somebody else has got him now. What are we supposed to do about it? And then Chris Van Hollen, this is a man who is living in Maryland, I don't know if he has an American citizen wife or not, or if she's also...
she's probably on firmer ground. I don't know if she's actually...
She must be on some sort of firmer ground, yeah. So Van Hollen goes down there and wants to meet with this guy, and it makes for quite a spectacle because first they're like, no, you can't meet with him. And then they're like, yeah, you can meet with him at this nice hotel in front of this pool.
Yeah.
And then like halfway through the conversation, they send over fucking margaritas.
Right.
And then when they
like Little John, but first tequila shots.
It's remarkable to me, first of all, that like the government of El Salvador is doing shit that the Trump administration would definitely do in terms of like putting out fake photographs and staging this sort of nonsense and saying, look at this U.S. senator. And then, of course, the entire right-wing media ecosystem picks it up and blasts it out as U.S. Senator from Maryland, Democrat, has margaritas with a wife beater and illegal immigrant in El Salvador, right? It's not even at the level of the James O'Keefe fucking Project Veritas level of deception, but it's the sort of bullshit that you fully expect the Trump administration to get behind and pretend is real life.
Right.
And it's entirely made up, but it's also the sort of thing that Van Hollen needed to know was going to be the likely outcome, right? That in no way is having a public meeting with this guy going to be to his benefit politically, and in fact is likely to be to the benefit of his political enemies. And it was just incredibly stupid of him to go and meet with this guy at all. And I say that not because like the principle is wrong, but because the principle is all that matters. And once you start fighting it in terms of the personal, now it becomes about the fact that this guy's wife had a restraining order taken out against him a few years ago because he beat the shit out of her, right? So like because there's no perfect victim for this sort of thing. You have all of the principle and all of the law on your side here, right? You are 100% in the right. And the only way that you can fuck this up is by giving them this sort of an in, and he gave them that fucking in.
Do you think that...
And it was somewhat shameful, I thought, of the gathered Sunday shows to really not hold him to account for that political disaster. And I know that these are largely friendly outlets, and like it's easy to say, look, the Trump administration, they're fucking monsters. But like this was very stupid of Van Hollen, the way that he handled it.
You know, at least in the interview on Face the Nation, he likely gave a similar answer in the other show on the other shows, but like he kind of wanted to make this point where he's like, it's not about a man. So maybe I think he recognized the way that it was being framed.
Okay. If you're sitting there enjoyably chatting with a man, though, guess what it becomes about?
Right. That's true. But, you know, I never really bought into this, but for a brief period of time, at least online, there were people that were making these weird claims that perhaps this guy is dead. And that's why both governments are like, we're not going to do anything to bring him back because maybe something happened to him. Like it'll be like
so you're saying it was worth just laying eyes on him?
No, what I'm saying is like, I wonder if he kind of the senator got fixated on just like, I need to show like proof of life just so, you know, and he did not consider the photo op situation that could come about. Like maybe he did not consider that because after the fact, you're right, it was used for other purposes, but like he's thinking, oh, I'll just go there, at least we'll demonstrate that this person's alive. And
it also, like, when you're arguing for the principle, you don't piss off the rabble as much as when you're the senator from Maryland and you could line up 1,000 weepy white women about how tough they've had it in their lives, right? And here's my senator going all the way down to El Salvador to fight for a wife beater, whereas my Maryland son cop was shot in the streets by an illegal immigrant or whatever, right? I'm making this up. But like there are a million perfect victims in Maryland for them to go point the cameras at while you go do your grandstanding thing down there in El Salvador. It makes far more sense to stay home and make your grandstanding points about the principle of the matter and not bring it down to this level of the personal.
Do you think that this is damaging to the senator or anybody? It seemed like this was just like an offsetting kind of thing. No,
but it's just another example of you cannot beat them at their fucking game.
Right.
You're never going to beat them at their game. They will just fucking lie and make shit up and put out photoshopped images of you drinking margaritas with the guy. Right? Like, you will lose.
Right.
And so you cannot engage with them on that turf. Maybe it bothers me more because, like, I think that if we have these conversations in terms of principles, it reinforces in the public's mind something that is bigger than the individual circumstances of one fucking illegal immigrant wife beater, right? That these things matter not because they impact that guy, but because they impact people who are more perfect victims, right? The civil rights that are taken from one person are the same civil rights that are going to be taken from you, right? And that's the problem. Speaking of, article from a couple of days ago from the Times, an immigrant held in U.S. custody simply disappeared. The Venezuelan man did not appear on a list of people sent to a prison in El Salvador, and his friends and family had no idea of his whereabouts. I don't know if this has been updated or not. I don't see an update on this article. But this is a guy, Ricardo Prada Vasquez, an immigrant from Venezuela working in a delivery job in Detroit. It sounds like he was working like a DoorDash job or something. Picked up an order at a McDonald's and heading to the address there in Detroit when he accidentally turns onto a road which goes directly to, it's a one-way street to the Ambassador Bridge, which is a one-way to Canada. Right. And so he accidentally took his ass to Canada. Right. And when he got to Canada, he turned around and tried to re-enter the United States.
Oh, man.
And they're like, wait a second. You're not allowed to be here, as it turns out. So they arrested him.
By the way, a quick aside. In high school, during the high school years, we had a family van.
I was going to say, Abe knows about going in and out of the U.S. through Canada.
We had a van, and this van did not have reverse capabilities. So, like, you can only go forward. You cannot go backwards, right? So you have to be always mindful.
Just like life.
Yes, you always have to be very mindful of where you're driving, right? You can't drive downhill in like a dead end, right? You just can't do it because there's no way for you to turn around. So, and no one in the family who was of age to drive got into trouble because you were very mindful of that. So I'm surprised that this person was not very mindful of this international border.
Well, as soon as he realized that he was on the bridge to Canada, he apparently texted a screenshot of his location to his buddy. He's like, hey, check out what I did. And then it went from being kind of funny and stupid to being a bit of a disaster for him personally. Mr. Prada was among tens of thousands of Venezuelans who migrated to the United States in recent years as their country descended into crisis under the government of Nicolas Maduro. Despite having a few years of college, he did not see a future in Venezuela. His brother Hugo said basically his whole family scattered to different parts of the globe. He and his former partner gave birth to a son who is now 4. Mother and child returned to Venezuela in 2022 after the couple broke up. Mr. Prada supported his son and spoke with him regularly, according to the wife or former partner or whatever. In 2024, Prada set out for the United States over land, and he was admitted to a port of entry in November of 2024. After waiting to obtain an appointment through the CBP-1 app, which the Biden administration had encouraged migrants to use in order to reduce chaotic crossings at the southern border, and was allowed to stay in the United States while his case was considered. So, not precisely undocumented, right? He wasn't invited into the country by any means, but he used the app and said, got himself an appointment to have his case considered at some point in the future, but unfortunately had a run-in with law enforcement in the meantime, and officials at ICE did not respond to queries from the Times about Mr. Prada's case over the past 3 days. But on Tuesday, after this story published, Ms. McLaughlin at DHS, which oversees ICE, said that officials conducted an investigation after he attempted to re-enter the United States and Michigan. Quote, further investigation resulted in Prada being designated a public safety threat as a confirmed member of Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan street gang, and in violation of his conditions of admission. She did not say why he did not appear on the list of those deported to El Salvador or to any other publicly available records, which is the whole point here is that he's not in that group photo of the group of dudes who was deported to that nightmare prison, and the United States federal government has no record of him or where he ended up after he was arrested in Michigan. The last that they have of him, I think, is in a prison in Texas, but there's no further records about his location since then, which is no way to run a railroad, as they say. Yes. We cannot be rounding up DoorDash drivers. Now, granted, he officially is certainly by no means is he a citizen. He's got a very dubious status here in this country, right? And under the Trump administration, doubly so. But we cannot be rounding people up and literally disappearing them with no trace. where to the point where you can't even go to the government and say, okay, but what did you do with my son?
Right.
What did you do with my friend? Surely we should be accountable in some way in that regard.
I mean, it seems like a very obvious thing. Like you should kind of show your work. The whole system works on that. Basically, you have to demonstrate that somebody committed a crime and then let the process take its course. But like if you disappear somebody, you don't even know. Like you couldn't, in theory, do that to somebody who is a citizen, right? Because like what opportunity would that citizen have to show that they are a citizen if they're disappeared? They're not on any sort of document. They're not processed anywhere. They're just disappeared. Like no one will know the difference. They'll just assume they got I don't know, kidnapped.
For the record, he is a tattooed man, but his family insists that he's never been a gang member, and the Times in their investigation process was not able to find any history of gang affiliation with him. It doesn't mean it's impossible, I suppose, but one would wonder what evidence the federal government was able to uncover that insisted that he was part of a gang that the New York Times was not able to unearth themselves.
In the coming decades, do you think the gangs going forward will come up with a new way to identify their associations? Because like this seems to be the tattoos of like, oh, MS-13 or whatever, like it's being used against them, like to easily identify, oh, you are of this group, fuck off, right? Like when they were running people up in El Salvador.
I mean, it's still a calling card. Like it's not a bad thing to be identified as.
No, but I mean, it's being used to incriminate you. Basically, that alone is enough.
That's been that way this whole time.
To where they would just round people up if you just have a tattoo.
I mean, it's certainly worse now, but like it's not like that's the thing. They're not trying to hide. Like the whole point of the gang is that you're not trying to hide that you're in the gang, right? Like you're sort of proud to be a member of the gang, and even if it is used against you, like that, it's almost good.
If they don't want to get caught, they won't do crime.
Right. But usually they're like, oh, they'll have to catch me committing a crime, not me. I just like the group,
right.
And now that's not the case.
Yeah. At the very least, this disappearing of and not being able to find this guy speaks directly to the chaotic clusterfuck that is the Trump administration over the course of the first 100 days. And there was a lot of, hey, this time around's going to actually be better, right? Like he's done this before. He's got a clear plan, right? Like there's
a concept of a plan.
He's got people around him that Pat Summerall's daughter is his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, and she seems to know what the hell she's doing. And he's not going to let other people run this administration now. Like Trump knows what he's doing. Things are going to turn out better this time. And this has been at least as chaotic, if not more chaotic, than the first go-round. They very clearly have no idea what they're doing. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the class of person who they are putting in charge it seems to be a bunch of fucking 25-year-olds
right.
who've never really done any of this stuff before. Or it's a bunch of people who have been marginalized from trying to do things for their entire adult lives because they're not capable of doing those things.
Right. I mean, the first term, there were a lot of competent people installed. There were 4-star generals running things. There were other people all across the administration serving as almost like as a guardrail against some of Trump's worst instincts. I mean, there were all these stories reported how Trump was wanting to do something and he was kind of talked out of it. There were occasions where he would want something done and then people would just say, let's not do it, and he'll forget about it. How true those stories were, we'll never know. But I figured that the second go round, he burned through so many normal people that the second go round he would.
That was your point,
yeah.
And I think that you were obviously right about that. But it felt like a lot of the people who had grown tired of Trump, but then spent 4 years hating Joe Biden, were much more sanguine about a second Trump term.
Right.
Right? Like, oh, you're just being ridiculous. Everything's going to be fine. Like, don't you remember 2019? Like, what was so wrong with 2019? And he's just going to bring prices down, and we're going to stop the flow of illegal immigrants over the southern border. You can calm down a bit. But that and that like maybe that's just a function of like the media that I was consuming, but it felt like that was coming from, because it was the fact that like since the election, the resistance didn't have any juice behind it. Right? Like it felt like since November, it was like, well, whatever. Right? Like we did this before. What's the worst that could happen? And Joe Biden was way too fucking old. And Kamala Harris fucking sucks. None of us like Kamala Harris. Let's be honest with each other. Like who really cares? What's the worst that could happen here? And it just felt like people were much more chill about the second Trump administration than was warranted. And the first 100 days have proven that was a mistaken impression.
I think,
to believe that somehow this was going to be fine.
I think there was also some resignation, like this is what the people want. What are you going to do, kind of thing. But like, I mean, as soon as the election was over, the nomination, like basically the people he wanted to run the Defense Department and the FBI should have been like alarming. Like, what? You want these people to run things? Like Tulsi Gabbard's going to be the DNI person? Like, it didn't make sense. Like, it should have been. I mean, maybe before the election, people had those opinions, but afterwards, it was like, oh, this is trending in the other way. Things are going to be a lot more volatile.
Yeah. That's from BBC. The U.S. will ban 8 commonly used artificial food dyes in a bid to help Americans know what's in their food, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced on Tuesday. Officials said 2 petroleum-based synthetic dyes would be phased out in the coming weeks and others by the end of 2026. Experts have linked the dyes, which are found in dozens of foods, including cereals, candy, snacks, and beverages, to neurological problems in some children. The Food and Drug Administration plans to authorize 4 new natural color additives in the coming weeks to help companies find alternatives quickly, the agency said. I don't know what in particular red dye number 40 is doing to us on the short or long term. I cannot possibly know that. I know that the FDA has previously determined that these things are safe at relatively low levels for human consumption, and that some other European food safety agencies, which have much stricter standards, have said that it is not safe. My suspicion is that it's probably fine to eat Fruit Loops with red dye in them, because the thing that is bad about Fruit Loops is almost certainly not
That's right.
the red dye.
That's true.
And it's like I was looking at a can of Mountain Dew Code Red that we have in the drinks cooler at the Little League snack stand, and I just pulled it off the shelf and I was looking at it. Yes, indeed, red dye number 40. You know what else it has in it? 46 grams of sugar.
What is it about the human mind as far as threat perception that if something is like an unknown, like a harm potential, people are more like concerned about, but like there's like a clear and present danger in eating so much sugar. And it's like, it's fine. Like basically it's like very obvious. No one is disputing it. There's no like conspiracy.
Confirmation bias.
It's just
all of these fucking kids get the blue and the teal Gatorade at
such losers
at the snack stand, and they're all staying away from the red Gatorade, which has got red dye number 40 in it.
No, that's not why. They just like the. They
but
just
I've heard
like it.
There's a parent who's on the board,
parents,
by the way, who thinks that the red dye number 40 is to stay away from.
Right.
And meanwhile, she's got no problem letting her kid, who's, and by the way, as a kid who was a little overweight when he was about 11, 12 years old, I think I can say this. I can speak from experience here. It's not the red dye number 40 that's hurting the kid right now.
I don't know, Bob. Maybe it was that the whole time for you.
It's the sugar in his Gatorade, okay? And the blue Gatorade is not better for him than the red Gatorade.
Right. I think the one problem with this approach is like, there's no, perhaps there's no harm in consuming this red product, but there's not a lot of downside either. Just get rid of it. But like maybe people's behaviors are going to be like, oh, as long as I avoid something red, I'll be in the clear. I'm gonna drink the healthier drink that's blue, or as long as it doesn't have that, I'm in the clear. Like that's not really the right message. I mean,
and even I have clients who really think that when they give their kids the organic dye-free gummy bears, the sugar in those gummy bears doesn't make them bounce off the wall.
Right.
It's like, you decided it didn't,
Yeah.
which is great. Like, I'm glad that works for you, but your kid's the same.
We can the amount of things that we can actually know, and this goes back to what you're saying about we know that the problem is the big pile of sugar, right? Like, that is knowable and controllable and can have a drastic impact on your physical life tomorrow, right? You could stop feeling bad and being lethargic and having like inflammation in your body because you eat way too much fucking sugar, right? Like, you could solve that problem next week by stopping drinking soda, right? Like, people anecdotally, right? The thing where anytime you talk to somebody who's quit soda, what do they say? Like, man, it kind of fucking turned my whole life around, right? Like, it changed everything when I stopped drinking soda. And if you think it's the dyes, I think you're out of your fucking mind.
But
but this is something that we know. And like, we know that drinking that much sugar is very, very bad for you. We don't know whether or not drinking red dye number 40 is actually bad for you, because there's not actually that, like, if once you control for sugar, there's not a major health difference between the Europeans and the Americans, right? It's not the red dye that's making Europe healthier in all likelihood.
Maybe it's blame the messenger kind of thing, but like, remember, I think it was Mayor Bloomberg. Remember enough of the big gulps? He was trying to kind of control the amount of sugary drinks people were consuming by like making it cost prohibitive, like taxing it, or I forget what the scheme was, but
I think he made like 64-ounce cups of soda illegal.
Right.
Like, I don't think it was a taxing thing. I think he said you can't sell something more than 32 ounces.
Right.
Or something
And
like
I
that.
could be wrong, but I recall the feedback from the public was like, "How dare you, freedom?" And like, "Oh, I want to drink, all the whatever." I do wonder, like, if Bobby Kennedy Jr., instead of coming out with this red dye thing, like if he said basically what Bloomberg said, would people freak out? I think like if he just said, "Oh, we figured it out, too much sugar in everything, so we're gonna slowly wean America off the sugar," like people would not react in the same way as they did with this red dye thing. They're like, "Oh yeah, well, whatever."
No, but he would never do that because of how the politics works.
Right.
With the food industry. Like, he can't say that.
But I mean, if the argument is you're trying to make America healthy again,
it's not about the food industry. It's not about the politics. It's about the fucking rabble.
Right.
What he can't do is upset. This is a man who's only in his position because of the populist politics of the moment.
Right.
He's not worried about pissing off big ag. He's worried about pissing off the people who've been living off of the products of big ag for fucking generations now, right? And if you tell them that, no, actually, you can't eat your Apple Jacks and your Pop-Tarts because they're fucking bad for you, then they're going to get mad at him and say, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. But if you tell them the dirty big ag has been putting bad chemicals in your otherwise perfectly healthy Apple Jacks and Pop-Tarts, they're going to cheer him.
Right. I mean, he's already got the branding, right? Make America healthy again, right? He could say, not only would my scheme make America healthy again, but we would save so much money in Medicare cost and overall healthcare costs with like driving down diabetes and other things associated with all the sugar consumption. And it, like you say, like people would freak out. Like, how dare you tell me to do A, B, and C? Like, I think this red dye thing is just like, oh, I don't care about that. And so, like, yeah, I'm all for it. And it's not going to do anything really. But it's just like an easy thing to point to. But like, if you were actually trying to make a difference, there would be a lot of pushback.
All right. The Supreme Court heard a case earlier this week about a bad book in the schools, and this is a case that was brought by parents who didn't want their children reading books about homosexuality and gay marriage and all of that sort of thing, like young kids. I believe starting as young as kindergarten, where some of these books were in the curriculum. Is it Connecticut? No, it's Long Island. It's New York. And the conservatives and the court in general seems to be leaning towards telling the parents that they're correct here and that they should be able to at least opt their children out of this sort of curriculum. And I was sort of amused by the reaction to this on a couple of different levels. On the one hand, you can sort of understand this as conservative parents, conservative homophobic parents overreacting to the school simply acknowledging the existence of homosexual people in the world, which is the way that the media is going to want to sort of frame this because of where our cultural sympathies lie at this point, which is, I think, fair to say. On the side of live and let live, why does it bother you, that sort of thing. On the other hand, these books present these lifestyles not as facts of existence, but as positive developments, right? As things that are good in the world. That little Timmy has two daddies, right, and that's good, right? It's just as good as a mom and a dad, and that may well be true, right? That it may well, in fact, be the case, but it is also still the case that it is the sincerely held beliefs of a not insignificant number of people that, in fact, that is explicitly wrong and counter to the way that they believe the almighty creator of the universe set things out to be. I may think that those people are wrong and stupid and backwards, but that doesn't change the fact that they think that. And it's funny to watch people react to this and then say, well, yes, but so now are they going to be able to opt their children out of biology class? Because if you don't teach the controversy, then you're not teaching the truth. And it's like, no, actually, and where the court's conservatives did a bad job here, or the lawyers arguing for the conservative side did sort of a bad job here by my reckoning, is that they were refusing to draw a line where I think a line is actually fairly easily drawn, right? Which is evolution is a fact of biology that can be demonstrated by hard science over many, many years, right? It's a reality of the world around us it sort of screams out of every time that we go to investigate biology. That hypothesis is the one that maps most neatly onto reality, right? It's a fact of the physical world, whereas questions of gay marriage are not facts of the physical world. They are very clearly questions of values and morals, and yeah, sure, there are homosexual individuals. That is a fact, but marriage is a civic and civil institution. It is not a biological fact. It is something that is constructed. It's sociological in nature. It is and also therefore religious in nature for some cultures, right? And so the hard and fast line that you can draw is this is some cultural bullshit and this is some biological bullshit, and neither the two necessarily need to cross. And that's where you can draw the line. And to say and to have people react to this case as well, this is just the court and conservatives revealing their homophobia. It's like, okay, cool. Right. Are you saying that there cannot be homophobes? Because actually, there can be homophobes. It is, and it speaks to me very clearly to the way that the culture shifted and the way that the liberals or that side of things went from having arguments about the world to saying, no, this is the way of the world, right, and we have the right of it. We have the absolute moral clarity on this question, and it's not acceptable for you to make an argument from a place of homophobia. And to the point where you're not even allowed to hold those beliefs. Right. And of course people are allowed to hold those beliefs. And if you tell them they're not allowed to hold those beliefs, they're just going to double down on those beliefs anyway. I'm going to do that incredibly annoying thing that I sometimes do and interrupt myself and Abe's response here and essentially remove the entirety of the conversation that followed. And I'm doing that not because I don't think – I mean, ultimately it's because I think that the conversation is something of a failure, and I take full blame for that in terms of the way that I approach this subject, I suppose. but I don't know how valuable the conversation is. And I know that this is probably overly precious of me on my podcast that is a very small audience. I'm going to include the entirety of the conversation, including an additional 20 minutes or so that we got into after the conclusion of the rest of the podcast, where we circled back to more of this conversation, because as is often the case, when I feel unsatisfied with the way that a conversation went, I want to go punch myself in the face again until I can figure out where things went wrong. And it's just it's obviously not an easy conversation, and it's not an easy subject, but because I have this sort of underlying commitment to the idea that we should be able to have conversations that don't have easy answers, and we should be able to have disagreements about things in the way that the world is, I wanted to include it anyway. But also, it feels very bogged down and sort of difficult to extract what I think would have been the best version of the conversation from it. Maybe we can get there some other time through some other slightly different avenue. But ultimately, listening to it, and as it was happening, and then listening to it again, it still felt like something of a failure of conversation. And again, I take responsibility for that. The previous 4 minutes here of me yapping apparently was the wrong way to approach this topic, because it resulted in what I see as something of a failed conversation. But you can be the judge of that for yourself. At the end of the podcast, where the podcast would normally just turn off, I will get back to the entirety of this conversation and what followed after the podcast as well. Whatever, if that's something that you as a listener wants to engage in, that's for you. It felt both wrong of me to leave it here, but also wrong of me to take it out entirely. So it will be added to the end of this podcast if you feel like listening to it there. Otherwise, back to the remainder of the episode, which I should also acknowledge I was not in the best headspace for any longer because of how I felt that this conversation got derailed. But whatever. It's one episode out of now 237 episodes of this podcast. They can't all be bangers, as they say. But back to the show. There's an interview that Mike Pesca has done with the people who wrote this book about how we fucked up COVID. And they were interviewed by the Daily as well. And basically there was this bizarre consensus about what we ought, like the groupthink that took over in 2020 and 2021. And it wasn't just liberal groupthink. It was, in fact, the consensus of pretty much everyone that we just do whatever the experts tell us to do. Right. And this is despite the fact that coming into the pandemic, we had a plan for how to deal with a respiratory virus that spread in much the same fashion that COVID-19 ended up spreading. And that plan was, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. And we should try to save the old people, and we should try to save the young people. But for the most part, we're pretty well fucked. And any of the mitigation efforts that we would take to try to prevent this from becoming a full-blown disaster probably won't work. And so it was the plan was, we don't know. There's not a lot that we can do. And then when rubber met road there in early 2020, all of a sudden it was, we got to do something. So we're going to do masks, and we're going to do social distancing, and we're going to close down the schools, and we're going to try to figure this out, right? Basically, the pandemic response plan was, what's not going to work? Fucking masks and lockdowns. And then what did they end up doing? They ended up doing lockdowns, and then they ended up doing masks also. And none of it worked, as it turns out. All of the divergences between communities in terms of outcomes came after the vaccine was available, as it turns out. There was no meaningful difference in any of the numbers between what happened in Florida versus what happened in New York or what happened in any other part of the country compared to any other part of the country. the differences between red America and blue America only became apparent after the vaccines came out, and there was a difference in uptake in different parts of the country because of your politics, more or less. And the same can be said for Europe. The Europeans that locked down didn't meaningfully do better or worse than the European countries that didn't lock down as much. And in fact, the divergence between America and Europe in terms of outcomes, once you control for things like we are naturally less healthy than they were to begin with, the divergence truly starts with the vaccines once again, right? In much the same way that that you can see that disparity between areas of massive vaccine uptake had less death, and whereas with less vaccine uptake you had more death. The same goes if you're just comparing the United States and Europe. And the question is sort of, and if we're going to learn anything from this, does there need to be a reckoning with the fact that we had this idea that this wasn't going to work, and then when push came to shove, it was like, well, fuck, we've got to do something.
Right.
And we did things that, in fact, probably, and this is maybe where you start to get into more arguments rather than fact, but in the long run, probably had more of a negative impact, and that we should have considered the external costs to shutdowns and to masking in our factor of whether or not we're going to implement them, right? And instead, we decided, no, the only thing that matters is saving lives in the moment. Right. And as it turns out, in the long run, that ended up doing more damage than good. Is
this conclusion based on the risk profile of this particular virus? Like, if it were a more deadly one, have they thought about?
No, because even a more deadly one, there's like the mitigation tactics that we put in place, we didn't think were going to work.
Okay.
Like the people who put these response plans in place were like, well, this isn't going to work. Right. And then, as it turns out, when it actually happened in the real world, they didn't fucking work.
Right. I think I do wonder if there's any learning from the pandemic, especially if it's spaced enough. I mean, it's likely not going to be another 100 years before the next big one. But let's say it's like a generation from now. We're like old geezers. 40 years from now, it's like a whole new crop of humans. And it's been a long time since that happened. The pandemic, COVID-19 happened. I suspect people are going to react in a clumsy way, similar to how we reacted. There'll be a segment of the population that will want to try to do something, and there'll be another group that will say, fuck it, let's not do anything. And then people are going to behave how they're going to behave, interacting with one another. And then, a million people will die, and people will look back and say, oh, we fucked it up. I think there isn't hey, let's learn from what happened in 2020. If this happened in 2050, let's say, I don't think there's going to be any lessons learned,
Well, I think that's in part because we have the thing that divides our two parties now, or divides our politics more than anything, is can we do something versus, or a belief that we can do stuff versus a belief that no, fundamentally government can't do stuff.
Right.
And unfortunately, the lesson to be learned from the pandemic is that in an important way, actually, the government can't do stuff when it comes to preventing mass death. Let's not forget, well over 1 million people, right, died of the COVID-19, despite us turning over our entire lives to the public health authorities for a short amount of time or a long amount of time, depending on which part of the country you lived in. Right?
Right.
We still had this bad outcome despite this insistence by the expert class and those who would defer to the experts, and by Democrats sort of as a philosophical group in terms of people who just think that the government can figure this thing out. Right. It was the case that, in fact, they could not.
But I think
and to whatever extent that they tried to manage it, they probably made it worse in terms of its impact on young people and in terms of its impact on the economy. Right. The trillions upon trillions of dollars that were poured into the United States and the global economy as a result of this were a bad idea. It would have been far better to just accept that there was going to be an amount of death that was going to be, to attempt to protect the most vulnerable, who, as it turned out, and it was revealed by no later than summer of 2020, was there any question as to whether or not young children were particularly vulnerable to this disease, which, as it turns out, the opposite was the case, right? They're largely not vulnerable to it. As seniors that we need to be concerned about, and other people with other risk profiles in terms of their general health. But like we knew relatively early on that, as it turns out, we don't have to worry about the kids so much. But there was still this insistence that we just need to do something, right? We need to take this big drastic action.
Right.
And we allowed, and it's not just Democrats, right? Like it was the belief it was the consensus of the overwhelming majority of people that we should continue to act.
Right.
And acting, as it turns out, seems to have been the sort of wrong thing to do.
I imagine that the need to do something is to kind of almost shift the responsibility. Like if you did nothing and 1 million people died, it'll be because you did nothing, right? But if you try to do something and 1 million people die, it's like, well, what are you going to do? 1 million people died, right? Like, I
we
wonder.
tried to do something and 1 million people died anyway, and also there's a generation of kids who are dumber because of it.
Right, but basically, I think it's just like a
super dumb
self-image.
anyway.
Like, what does it mean to just let 1 million people die? Because then it'll be an outstanding question. Maybe we could have trimmed that by half if we did something. Like, but now we know that doing something.
But there was no indication that doing anything was going to matter, right? That's the thing that drives me most nuts about it, is that the expert class had determined before this started, there's probably nothing we can do. And then it started, and they were like, fuck, we got to do something. Right? And no, we know it's not going to work.
Right.
And it's going to have horrible negative consequences as a result. But we just have to do it. And it's like it's this attempt to it's like fake juice for the institution. It's like, no, if we just clap hard enough for Tinkerbell, then the National Institutes of Health are going to figure this the fuck out at some point. It's like, no, that's not how faith in institutions work. Faith in institutions comes from truth and humility of those institutions, not from outrageous claims about how they can keep you safe. And as it turns out, they fucking can't.
There has to be a recognition, though, that there is the human factor. Like, if the hospital knew this person is and this is not COVID, just like some sort of, you come to the hospital emergency room, and you're basically like a dead man walking, right? So it's not worth it for us to use all the machines that's going to cost thousands of dollars to kind of prop you up on the very minute chance that you're going to survive it, right? Like, but people want you to do it. Like, you have to try to save somebody, even if it's not going to work, and even though the person's going to die anyways. Like, it would be, I think, one thing that's not being taken into consideration, like, what would happen if government sat on their hands and 1 million people died? There would be a segment of the population that would be enraged by it, and like there's already a trust deficit, and that's why a lot of the initiatives the government undertook did not work, because people don't trust the government. But if you did nothing, if you sat on your hands,
that what I'm saying is the initiatives that the government undertook weren't going to work anyway.
Yes, but there's no proving. The government does nothing. A bunch of people die. The government can't sit there and say, well, just trust us.
Right.
If we had done anything, we would have had the same outcome.
Yeah, you almost have to go through the exercise of failing to demonstrate that it failed, right? Because like if you don't, there's going to be like, the government failed us. Blood is on your hands and all of this, you know. But at least now,
and this way they'd say, well, at least we tried.
Yeah, we tried.
Good. Then you throw the bums out and you start over. Like that's how it's supposed to work. It's a capricious, fucking uncontrollable situation.
Right.
And sometimes you roll the dice and you're the president when a fucking pandemic happens. That's fucking bad news for you, right? Like you lose because there's nothing you can fucking do about it, except do what like Trump very clearly should have done in 2020, which is to say, to be like, that's why this notion of a comforter in chief actually matters. It's because actually the world is an impossible to control place. And sometimes you just need somebody to show up and say, hey, I'm sorry that happened, but we've got your back moving forward, right? And like that's what you can like. I think that there is something fundamental to human existence that most people understand, which is the world is random and weird and bad, and we can't fucking control things.
Right.
And instead, there's this insistence by at least one half of the political spectrum that says, no, actually, we can fix it, right? We can control for everything, and it's going to be just fine.
Right.
It's not.
I mean, like, you would give that speech, my fellow Americans. Some of us will not make it, but, well, most of us will. Have a good night. Like, you have to give them some hope, you know, like, there's going to be some positive development.
Yeah, I guess. But, like, I don't know what fucking shutting the schools down. Like, how is that? How is that the right answer?
Yeah.
All right, Abe, let's play a quick Mark Strassmann.
All right.
Washington lawmakers face rising anger from constituents.
Lawmakers in Washington have faced a series of tough, contentious issues in the early months of the second Trump administration. Well, now back in their home states, many voters are making sure their voices are heard. CBS's Mark Strassmann reports on the rising tensions at town halls.
North of Atlanta, Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's town hall had flashes of WrestleMania. Hostility, jeering, scuffling with security, and a ringmaster, Georgia's firebrand congresswoman.
This is a town hall. This is not a political rally. This is not a protest.
3 hecklers were arrested. Police tasered 2 of them, including this man. These town halls have become so raucous, Greene is one of the few Republicans to hold one during this congressional recess. Their national party has suggested members hold virtual town halls instead.
Already in 3 months, we got more emails than all of last year.
What does that tell you?
For an hour in Iowa, a room full of Senator Charles Grassley's constituents ganged up on the 91-year-old Republican.
Do your job, Senator.
Yeah.
Obey the Supreme Court.
They're furious, and they want answers on issues from Social Security to deportations.
Are you going to bring that guy back from El Salvador? Why not?
Well, because that's not a power of Congress.
In these moments, some people clearly seem scared. Alaska's Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski made this extraordinary admission.
We are all afraid. I'm oftentimes very anxious myself about using my voice because retaliation is real.
And it's not just Republicans getting an earful from their constituents.
I don't believe that you have thought large enough.
Democratic Representative Laura Friedman got the same message from Californians.
Okay, please sit down. We have a lot of questions I want to get through.
Do more. Fight harder. And yet there's this reality check. The president's approval rating stands at 47% in our recent CBS News poll, higher than at any point during his first term. Mark Strassmann, CBS News, Atlanta.
All right, I did CBS News' senior national news correspondent, Mark Strassmann, get off a good one?
No, he did not.
Ooh, sorry, Mark. Try again next time.
By the way, the picture they used of Trump was perfect. Like, despite whatever, he just has this stupid face on him. Still here, 47%.
And lower, I believe, now, since...
it's trending downwards. That is a remarkable thing for a sitting senator to say, that they're afraid and they're anxious. That is, like, what? There's like you're like one of 100 and you're afraid.
Well, she speaks out against Trump and receives a absolute fucking shit torrent of response from it, I'm sure.
Did Strassmann even try? I mean, I guess last weekend
was very, very low effort.
Last weekend was WrestleMania, and he likened a town hall to that, but that's not a good one.
No, he didn't even really try. It was a bummer. I particularly liked the angry Iowans yelling at.
Yes, that was the good one.
At Grassley.
Yeah. By the way, 91 years old, you're still hanging around. You're not like just
too old.
Why not retire? They have no coastline over in Iowa, but go down to Florida and just relax before you're dead.
He still looks good.
Yeah, he's still got a couple more years in him. I think he's handing off his seat to his kid, who's probably older than us, right? He's got to be in his 50s.
Oh yeah, is there a younger?
I think there's like another Grassley, but I could be wrong.
You've been listening to Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with Bob and Abe. Find the show on Substack, brainiron.substack.com for more from us, including the Billboard Hot 100 game. This week, mostly we just talked about Baz Luhrmann's classic Moulin Rouge. Not so much music, but that wonderful movie. Brainiron.substack.com for that. You can head to tetramermusic.com, Tetramer music.com for more from Mark Gillig, who composed our opening and closing themes. Abe, did you go see Sinners this weekend?
I did. I went to go see Sinners. Ryan Coogler's Sinners. Apparently, all of the movies he's made as a director featured Michael B. Jordan. Fruitvale Station, the Black Panther movies, and some other movie.
The Rocky Balboa or whatever, right?
Yeah. And so once again, they're pairing up.
Creed, not Balboa,
Creed.
right?
But it's in the Balboa universe, right? Apollo Creed's kid, whatever.
Right.
So very entertaining movie. This is from the trailer, so I'm not spoiling too much, but it's set in the 1930s Jim Crow South in Mississippi. Michael B. Jordan plays two characters, and the one fault I will give this movie is that scheme. I just a month ago was here talking about
you just did this.
Bobby De Niro playing two different guys, and it was kind of it wasn't that difficult to keep them apart because they made some effort to separate them, but like Michael B. Jordan plays twins. One is named Smoke and the other one is named Stack. Smoke, Stack, right? And one of them is like a rougher, do whatever it takes kind of brother, and the other one is a little more cautious, but I'll still do some fucked up things brother. And so throughout the movie, I just kept on not figuring out who's who. Like in my head, I was like Michael A. Jordan and Michael B. Jordan. That's the way to separate the two, but I still couldn't do it. I think they could have just had cousins or something, or brothers that weren't like twins that look exactly like each other. They could have made it work without that gimmick. But anyways, the movie, these brothers, they went up to Chicago to work for the mob, and it turns out that they stole from the mob. They got a lot of money and booze, and they went back down to Mississippi to open up a juke joint. To invite people who play the blues and like make a lot of money in their hometown or whatever, right? So for the first hour,
the mob doesn't care for that.
What's that?
The mob doesn't care for that.
No, yeah. So they're worried about the mob coming after them. But for the first hour, that's the story, right? Them setting up this venue. They bought the property from these racists, and maybe they're going to come back. They're wondering where they got all this money. So it's just a typical movie first hour, and then vampires. It becomes a vampire movie again. This is not something that they withheld from the promotional package. Just your typical vampire movie. The same rules. You got the stake at the heart thing. Like you can't just kill them a regular way. They don't like the sun, that sort of thing. And then one by one, different characters are getting bit, and they have become them, vampires. And there's this tension where one of the brothers gets bit, and so he's a vampire, and then the other brother is not. And like, will the twin kill the other twin? There's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, well worth a watch. I will say that the two twin character thing was needlessly there. I don't think it benefited the movie. I mean, there's a lot of Michael B. Jordan in it, maybe too much. But other than that, good movie. A lot of blues music. It wasn't too bad.
This is well received, I believe.
Yes,
people are really liking it.
Did a lot in the I think the box office it did like almost 60 million or something. Yeah, so it was well received, and then it was successful. And it's like the only like decent movie the last few months this year has been, like I said before, not very good. So at least they have something decent. You know, a lot was made of the fact that this is a original movie, so it's not like a superhero movie or it's not like some movie from like 30 years ago. I will say the other way to get people to show up, you know, so people, if it's like a known IP, like, oh, they're making another Jurassic whatever, and people will show up because they're familiar with that world, right? So that's like, oh, that's going to be the pull.
Right.
I think the other thing, even if it's an original movie, directors have a pull. Kind of like Christopher Nolan, no matter what he does, people will show up. I think it seems like maybe the Black Panther movies got Coogler this sort of pull, but a lot of it was like a Coogler film. Kind of like, I think Jordan Peele had that for a little bit, you know, where like hey, this person is, he had this new movie called Nope.
like Spike Lee.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's going to be the other way to where people will like, okay, I don't know what this is about, but I'll watch it because this person is usually good for it.
How I used to be with Fincher, and then he started just making fucking Netflix bullshit. Like, make movies, man. What are we doing?
Yeah. And it's not like TV shows are easier. They got to spend a lot of months doing it. But yeah, very good, entertaining movie. Like I said, there'll be some quibbles you may have, but overall, entertaining enough. Unless you don't like vampire movies, you know.
No, I mean, seems like it'd be fun.
That was the only movie that I watched. I also watched, caught up. It's only been 2 episodes. The Last of Us.
Yeah, we have not yet, and I understand I sort of know what's coming here because of.
Did you play the game, or just like you're just?
I never played
aware?
the game, but like the game was popular enough that I remember there being upset when the sequel came out, and then
I'm nervous to watch the next season.
I read up on the upset, and so like I've known what was coming here more or less.
Okay, all I'll say is the second episode is worth a watch, but all I'll say is that it played a lot like a Game of Thrones episode. Like halfway through the movie, the episode, I was like, wow, this is like it just kind of felt Game of Thrones-y.
Right.
And it was
it good? I've heard basically universal acclaim seems to be the
second episode's good. Yeah, the first one was kind of setting up the world. There's like a little bit of a time jump, you know, but like the second episode is pretty good.
Yeah. Did we watch anything?
Just the James Jonestown thing.
That's right. Lori's friend Julia was here, and they like to watch bad television when Julia is here.
We like to watch all kinds of television, but also we like to watch things that allow us to still talk.
I see.
To each other.
That's an underrated feature. Yeah, you don't want something that's commanding all your attention, right?
Yeah,
you know?
like we don't need to see each other 3 times a year to not talk.
Yeah.
That you're describing the watching of bad television, right?
So what we watched wasn't bad.
Sure, I'm sure it was fine, but it's also like, okay, pointless television, like television that you just it's a
pointless.
Documentary about Jim Jones and Jonestown.
Yeah.
Boy, this is well trodden ground here, right?
Yeah,
we're not going to learn anything new here.
Not going to learn anything. But it was whatever. We watched it.
I forget what the platform was.
That was Hulu.
Okay.
I think it was National Geographic.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a real motherfucker, that Jim Jones.
Like, you know, his son was in it. Like, it was another perspective. Not fresh, just another one.
What if, the senator got, like, shot, like the congressman? Like, that would have been an international incident.
If Chris Van Hollen had been shot while going to El Salvador?
Like, you shouldn't have shown up here. Like, because there was, like, that story where, like, there are...
That's what it sounded like.
People that were distressed, you know, like go check out this Jonestown situation, and then like a reporter and a member of Congress show up, and they just get like shot.
Yeah, and then fucking 900 some odd people end up killing themselves.
Or they're
turns out a lot of them didn't kill themselves.
Yeah, under duress they killed themselves.
What do you mean? It turns out they all killed themselves.
Well, some of them were like forced. Like, they shot them in the neck with cyanide.
Yeah, they weren't like all true believers. The whole thing was falling apart. They was like, let's just kill everybody. And they forced them to, you know.
The Sun was all butthurt about people still using the phrase "drinking the Kool-Aid." This is what I picked up from this documentary, that he wishes that people would not use the phrase "drink the Kool-Aid," and it's like, nope, sorry, man, that's got fucking perfect branding, and it's not going anywhere.
Even though, it wasn't Kool-Aid, right? It was
right. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Like you're not gonna, and because his concern is, well, these weren't Kool-Aid drinkers, these were real human beings.
Right.
Like, and we need. It's like, nope, sorry, it left that orbit a long time ago.
The problem with the phrase "drink the Kool-Aid" as it's used now is that there's a weird implication that what's in the Kool-Aid is the belief. Like, if you drink the Kool-Aid, you will then be a true believer. When it's the other way around.
Right.
Like, that's just how I hear it is like, yeah, you know what? It's like I lived in Athens for 5 years, and then after that, I drank the Kool-Aid, go Dogs.
Yeah.
Like, no. It's, no, you drank the Kool-Aid, and then you died.
But sometimes it takes it, sometimes things kind of become its own thing. Like, it just,
and it's fine.
A point not made in the documentary, and probably explicitly counter to what the documentary was driving at in some way. But something that I felt watching it was, man, that congressman shouldn't have gone down there and fucking stuck his nose where it didn't belong. Right. This is not out of some respect or sympathy for Jim Jones by any means, but like, name the good that came out of doing that. And the answer is none good. And at some point, I think you just have to say, look, these 1,000 people decided to leave, and they're not coming back. Right. And what good is bothering them going to do?
But I would imagine that if you were a member of Congress, you have like plot armor in your mind. Like, well, they're not going to shoot me. I'm a member of Congress. Like, I'm like, I got some sort of protection just by virtue of being associated with the federal government or the United States. Like, you wouldn't want to, because that would ruin his little Jonestown thing. So he thought like, oh, he's not going to do anything to me.
Yeah, and it's not quite Waco, right? Like, it's not quite.
It's worse.
Why is it worse than Waco?
More people died.
Yeah, but we're not just doing that kind of math here. Like, the government acted extraordinarily badly when it comes to Waco, and this was just like sort of vaguely badly. And probably the situation down there was teetering anyway, and like, who knows what the negative outcome, like how bad. Yeah,
would Jonestown have happened anyway? Just 2 months later.
Right, and who can say? And maybe this is back to the fucking COVID conversation again, but like, maybe there's probably nothing good that can be done here.
You should. This should be the new 2028 campaign, the Do Nothing movement. Just
It's not do nothing.
That's the 2024 campaign.
Imagine the harm that could result from doing something. Right? It's not necessarily just do nothing, but consider the consequences is all I'm asking for.
Right.
Is that it? We didn't fucking do anything else?
I don't think so.
Man, it was a lame-ass episode of this fucking podcast.
No, it wasn't.
Hey, have you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
I guess that's all we've got for you tonight then. We'll talk to you next time.
Later.
Like, are you saying that there cannot be homophobes? Because actually there can be homophobes. It is, and this is, it speaks to me very clearly to the way that the culture shifted and the way that the liberals or that side of things went from having arguments about the world to saying, no, this is the way of the world, right, and we have the right of it. We have the absolute moral clarity on this question, and it's not acceptable for you to make an argument from a place of homophobia, and like to the point where you're not even allowed to hold those beliefs. Right. And of course people are allowed to hold those beliefs, and if you tell them they're not allowed to hold those beliefs, they're just going to double down on those beliefs anyway.
You know, I was confused by this this case because I don't have kids. I'm out of the loop on the schools and all that stuff. But I thought parents already had discretion when it comes to what their kids participate in and not. Because, I mean, parents can pull their kids out of school entirely and homeschool them, right? They can take them out of school, public school entirely and send them to a private religious school, right? I mean, they have to abide by whatever standards they have in that state or whatever. But there's a lot of wiggle room that parents already have.
Yeah, but that's an acceptable response to we're going to teach your 5-year-old about gay marriage is not. And if you don't like it, you can send them to private school for $15,000.
No.
A year.
What I'm saying is, parents have a lot of say in what their kids consume as far as education goes. So I already thought parents, if you're teaching them sex ed, even if it's at the appropriate age level, or if it's some sort of story about mommy and mommy or, whatever at a younger level, parents could say, you know what, our kid's going to sit out and the school will just go on. I didn't know that.
Right. The point was that the school was saying there's an opt-out for sex ed, but there's not an opt-out for this because this is not something that is opt-outable.
Right.
It is.
And I'm shocked that this is the first time this has been challenged, right? You would think this would have, bubbled up to the surface many, many years ago, because I'm surprised that you can't opt out of that, but you can opt out of sex ed, which is if we're drawing lines, that is a pretty open and shut kind of thing. This is how, kids happen, and you need to know this stuff, you don't need to necessarily know about love between two dudes and two women, right? This. So,
I mean, without the context, we learn about married, regular.
Right, that's true. Yeah, I mean,
heterosexual people.
Yeah.
So, is this just a case where people happen to be, they're married and they happen to be of the same gender?
I don't know. It was a child's book called Uncle Bobby's Wedding, in which the nephew or niece.
Is the point gay marriage, or is the point a story?
I mean, you don't write a story called Uncle Bobby's Wedding in which he marries another dude.
Okay.
Unless
so
the point is gay marriage.
Would they be okay with a book about a wedding between just a couple? A man and a woman couple. They'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I imagine.
This reminds me of the thing that happened a couple years ago at our school with the video of the ABCs of LGBTQ. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember.
And my mind went to, I went to Little League, and the first thing they say in the Little League pledge is, I trust in God, and I just have to sit there and be okay with it, because it's a fact of the country that there's a lot of religious people, and it's a fact of the world that there are gay people.
Right.
Sorry. It sucks for me when I'm uncomfortable, but I'm uncomfortable, and I make it through.
Yeah, I was in plenty of everybody huddle up, on the wrestling team. Let's huddle up and do a little Jesus prayer. I'm like, all right, let's do this.
Okay, it's offensive, but okay,
whatever. If that's what people are into. Bend but don't break, but that should go to the schools too. I'm surprised that this was a thing that you could not opt out of already. And this seems to be a pretty, at least in my estimation, pretty straightforward case. The parents should have some leeway, whatever it is. I think it's whatever, you're the parent, do whatever. I think I give a lot of latitude to parents when it comes to this.
We get a lot of fucking emails from the school. They're always, it's just too, there's already so much, this is what we're doing, and this is what we're doing, and this is what we're doing, and we're all like, okay,
right,
whatever.
Right.
Just do your thing. That's why I send them to you. Trust you.
If my question then, Lori, is should a school explicitly be permitted to tell your children that gay marriage is good and just as good as regular marriage?
See, I thought that would
Is
be
that what they're saying?
The Supreme Court case would be
And
that.
is it not? I don't know. Like, I don't think that they should say anything is as good as anything else. Is marriage good? We don't know.
I mean, all of the science says that marriage is good.
But people keep
all of
getting
the research
divorced,
insists
though.
that marriage is good and that there are better outcomes for everyone across the board, including the children.
Yeah, but that's true also of gay marriage.
I don't
if you're
think
going to
that
look at the
there's-
science,
I
like
don't
gay
think- I
marriage
don't
is
think
just as good
I don't
as straight marriage.
I don't know that is necessarily true, but sure. It's a weird non-answer to my question. Do you think that a school should be telling children that gay marriage is good? And that because we now live in a country where gay marriage is the law of the land, it is that there's no moral question that parents are not permitted to raise a moral objection to their children being told that gay marriage is good when at home and at church they're being told something different.
As compared to straight, I don't think they should be talking about whether marriage is good or not in kindergarten or whatever this is.
Okay.
Schools are very localized as it is, so I would imagine that whatever the flavor of that community is going to reflect the school.
Well, that's the
curriculum.
problem. So this is a lawsuit that was brought by, I think, some Muslim families who didn't appreciate the fact that the local liberal-leaning Democratic Long Island School Board had decided in this fashion, right? And of course, as usual, the civil rights question is not a question of what the majority of people think ought to be happening, but it's a question of whether or not the rights of the minority are being infringed upon. And if you are a Muslim of a Muslim family who's sending their kids to the public school and they're telling you that gay marriage is good, then obviously that's going to be counter to the way that you're trying to raise your children. And
go ahead.
No, I don't know where the end was going.
Oh, okay. To me, this seems to be a pretty open and shut case. The local school should have the flexibility to incorporate things reflective of their community in their curriculum, and parents should have the right to not participate in certain things that they're not comfortable with. There should be like a pretty it should be.
There's just no recognition of the fact that this is. Like, I know it shouldn't be taboo, right? And it shouldn't be considered something to be frowned upon necessarily, but it remains deviant. It remains, and maybe this is my own. I'm sure that this will be me being accused of homophobia or what have you, but it remains counter to the majority in overwhelming fashion, right? Like 90+% or something of people are not going to be homosexual. And so even like it's this weird tension between no, it's just perfectly normal, and then the reality of the situation is no, it's not.
But
right?
I mean,
and so the only way that we have come to normalize it is by expanding the definition of what queer is to include fucking stay-at-home moms who maybe made out with their best friend on a drunken night when they were 19, right? Like, we're not. Well, like, you're not queer, sweetie. You're married with 2 children. You're married to a dude with 2 children, right?
If the solution is ask the parents if this is okay and they can opt out, how do you figure out which of those things you need to ask about?
Right.
Do you need to ask that if you're going to talk about Hanukkah?
Right.
Because there's very few Jews, actually.
Right.
If we're worried about, like, the minority, like, oh, there's not that many gays, but we're going to talk about it. Like, where do you draw the line between a thing you say, this is just what we teach because it's fucking math, or this is a little meh, and, like, how do you make something normal if before you talk about it, every single time you have to ask permission.
Right. I mean, I think frequency or how common it is should not play a role. I mean, like, there aren't that many left-handed people. There's nothing deviant about them.
It's not what they thought
back in the day,
a couple thousand years ago.
But again, I still go back to let the schools, come up with a curriculum and let the parents decide what they're comfortable with, and everybody's happy. This is like, from what I hear, the people who are the Muslim family, they're not saying you can't teach this to anybody. They're just saying, like, we would just want to take our kids out of this particular segment of the.
But how do you decide which ones to ask about?
Because, I mean, the information, I guess, shared with parents, like what they're going to teach their kids. And then if you're not comfortable with certain things, just let the schools know. Like, I think there's a way you can work around this to where everybody gets what they want. You're not forcing anything on anyone, and everybody's happy. And in many places, like if it was a conservative kind of place, they would not even do this, right? Like if you're more like a Bob-minded person, like, oh, this is outrageous, we shouldn't have this, then they wouldn't in those communities. But it sounds like this school community was into it for the most part. If you were to ask most parents, they would probably be for teaching the kids this little kid story about their uncle.
It's just not. Whatever. I'm going to lose this entire fucking conversation because I'm real mad about the way that it went. But it's my own fault. It doesn't matter.
What do you think? Do you think it'll be like a partisan split? Because this to me should be like a unanimous. Like, yes, the parents have the right.
No, this is 6-3. This is a classic 6. The liberals never vote on principle when it comes to
I would love to hear what the dissenting opinion is. How are you going to write that? What is the argument? You should force parents to have their kids do things that they don't want? What is that? It just didn't make sense. Yeah. Because, I mean, like, over was it the UK? Wasn't there a court decision? They came down and said that, like, defining what a woman is over there, and the UK Prime Minister, who's on the liberal side, although it's different over there, he also came out and said, like, a woman is a woman is a woman kind of thing. Like, it seems like things are shifting in the other way, at least in the UK. And so we'll see how this case goes over here.
Yeah. I just have what I run up against is the pretending towards tolerance when your bottom line position is that you are utterly intolerant of a dissenting view. And that goes for the people who insist that we need to talk to 5-year-olds about gay marriage, that in fact this is so normal and so good that to stifle talk of it is itself a sort of sin, right? And that you are wrong to believe otherwise. And I don't think that, first of all, it's no way to do politics or culture in a pluralistic society where we do, in fact, have these divides between and intractable ones, right? And though a great deal of headway has been made in terms of the acceptance of homosexuals in conservative spaces, I think that's certainly safe to say, an experience that we've had over the course of certainly our entire lifetimes. You're never going to eliminate your opposition entirely, and there's this attitude of inevitability and absolute moral righteousness on behalf of the supposedly tolerant non-religious types that is just completely unacceptable to me. Whatever. And like, if you can't tell me that there's a difference between talking about a marriage between a man and a woman and two men, you're out of your fucking mind. Of course there's a difference between those two things. One of them has not been a civic or legal institution for more than fucking 10 years, right? We just did this. Right. We just started doing this. And like, we pretend like we know. Again, this is like such a classic, like the utter fucking shameless audacity of it, the shameless absolute we know better than anyone has ever known before of it is what I'm so opposed to. And it has nothing to do with the particulars. It has nothing to do with the specifics of the homosexual question or not. It's just, you just got here, right? Like this has just changed, and now you're insisting that everyone who came before you was like, it's, go read the fucking Old Testament. I know it sounds silly, but like the degree to which we despised, had no regard for human life. The individual doesn't matter at all, right? Like it's just slaves and fucking women, and you rape them and you make them your wife, and like it's just, there's no, the notion of individual sovereignty, the notion of the dignity of the individual human being, like barely existed 300 years ago. Right. So before you go judging people for holding slaves, before there was the widespread acceptance of the idea that an individual person mattered, right? like it just didn't exist in that, and it's so completely anathema to the modern consciousness to imagine what that was like before. I don't know.
You know, but I think it's that's causing. I think there are some people who hold the opinion that this is not a matter of differing opinions. It's like right or wrong, and this is the right thing. Like your example with back in the day, slavery and like rape, and there was a different formulation back then. But like the argument is like it was always wrong. Just because it wasn't recognized as wrong then does not mean it wasn't wrong then, right? And so similarly, they're saying love is love, and like love between two dudes was always right. It just wasn't recognized until 11 years ago, or whenever that Supreme Court case happened. And so I think it is that mindset to where they're saying, like, we are in the right, you're in the wrong, and these kids don't need to know the context, right? I mean, they just got here. They're brand new humans, right? So they're like, hey, this is whatever. This is, instill this right thing, this right belief. I think their belief in their being right is making them less humble and tolerant of other people's positions, and that's where they get into trouble, where there's
a position that is only going to be reinforced because of biological reality for the totality of human existence moving forward, right? It requires cognitive dissonance to accept homosexuality as a perfectly acceptable way of being in the world. I'm not saying that the cognitive dissonance is wrong. I'm saying it is probably true and good, right? Because these outlier cases are examples of human individuals equally deserving of dignity and respect, right? That's the case. But also, it will continue to reinforce itself on a fundamental level, which is that the species cannot propagate itself but for the joining of these two opposite sexes, right? It is simply, there's no other way to do it until we become pod people, right? Until we become all lab-grown maniacs.
Maybe we're not far from that, and that's why the numbers are getting up there.
Well, and we're living in a time where people aren't having kids. And people can get married and not have kids, and it's not like that marriage is not as good.
I mean, lots of people would say that, in fact, that marriage is not as good if you're not producing children. What are you talking about? Like, of course.
But, I mean, some people can't conceive. It doesn't mean that their marriage is...
Sure. Again, the outlier case is worthy of dignity and respect, but it doesn't change the underlying reality that in order to propagate the species, they better get to fucking and making babies.
Right. But that's not what all people want, right? That's not their desire necessarily.
No, it doesn't have to be. I'm not... Right. Yeah. Sure. There's just not any acknowledgement of... it's okay for people to be homophobic. And I know that sounds weird, but like, isn't it okay for people to be homophobic? Like, it's not fair to the homosexuals born to those people. Right. But like, there's a whole universe of unfair.
Of course it's okay for people to be homophobic, but it's also okay for those people to be uncomfortable.
it's not about being uncomfortable. It's not about that at all. It's about, I'm not asking that they have to be cosseted in some way. I'm not asking that the homophobic people need to have their feelings protected, but they need not have the new order shoved down their throats either. Right. And like demanding that I tell your 5-year-olds about gay marriage is simply not the same as demanding that I tell your 5-year-old about marriage, right? It's not the same thing. And it's like, it's crazy to insist that it's the same thing.
I mean, but I think separate from that, I think it's inconsiderate to not recognize that other people hold different views, right? Instead of just like saying that this is the one and true opinion, like to be so dogmatic about it, to where like you don't even recognize that somebody may not think that, and just say like, okay, we're not all going to agree on this, and it's fine. Like, your feelings are valid, even though I don't agree with your point of view. Like, there isn't, like, that sort of space to kind of just, like, yeah, you're over there on this issue. We're not going to see eye to eye on this, and that's fine.
Right. And I don't think that the Little League Pledge should include, I believe in God, right? Like, I think that is, like, and it's funny, like, and it's not because I think that people ought to be made to feel comfortable. It's because that's wrong, right? And like, and the point is not that everyone should be comfortable all the time, or that some people should be made to accept discomfort. The point is that it is well, whatever. But like, it's just weird to me that your response to that parents are made uncomfortable by people telling their 5-year-olds about gay marriage is, well, I was made uncomfortable by the Little League Pledge, when, like, to me, they're just not even remotely close. Like, for one thing, there ought not be, I believe in God in the Little League Pledge, but also I think that when the prevailing orthodoxy is what it is, like, that sort of matters, right? Like, and to some extent, the weight of history and biological reality and custom actually do play some sort of a role, don't they?
But it doesn't make it more or less right. It's just like something is more conventional, something is more, there's more history behind it. I mean, people should still have their views, you know, whatever view you have, you should be able to, you know, work around.
Right, but maybe because when I think about why the view exists, right? Because now, if we're going to go big picture, the reason the view exists is because of biological reality, right? And because it is more productive to the tribe to have, like if we're going back here a ways, but like, it is better for the tribe for man and woman to get together and raise children and produce family units in that way.
Child brides were a thing, you know. That's not I think just because things were the way they were, it doesn't kind of imbue some sort of legitimacy on it, right? Like, you should.
No, but the reason that homophobia becomes institutionalized, becomes a thing, is because it is deviant and counter to the goal of the species, right? Like that. I'm not making a moral claim here. I'm saying the moral claim arises from a biological reality that is true, right?
But do you not think that is just a coincidence in this case? Because, like, there's no, like, biological argument for racism, and that's been an enduring thing, right? Like, so, like,
right, but the reason that, so go to why racism is a thing, and why the racism is a thing is because when you mix tribes that have not previously had social interaction, you get violence, right? Like, the history of human civilization is one tribe meeting a tribe with whom they are unfamiliar, and there being brutal violence between them, and then you have just one tribe left, right? And the other tribe fucks off, and so you develop this fear of that which is different, and as it turns out, that which is different is very easily identifiable oftentimes by the color of the person's skin, right? So, like, in that same way, racism, which is equally morally unacceptable as homophobia is, rises from, right, a sort of biological fact of the world, or a sociological fact, maybe a more fundamental sociological fact than homosexuality, but a fact nonetheless, right? Which is that when civilizations clash, bad shit happens, and so we should fear the other. It doesn't make it right or good, but it does make it something that is worth recognizing, that we have to tolerate the sort of inherent intolerances that exist in people,
right?
And to fail to do that is to only breed more contempt and hatred,
right,
and intolerance,
right? And allowing parents to pull their kid out gives that flexibility, and everybody's happy.
Yeah. But that's the thing, they won't be happy.
I mean, I'm shocked that this is still a thing. Like, I thought that, if anything, it would be the other way around, where, like, some complaining party would want the school to not even teach it at all. And the Supreme Court is deciding, yeah, you're right, this is a new way of thinking, and it should not be included in the curriculum or whatever. Like, if that was, like, the Supreme Court case, that would be one thing. But, like, for parents to say, like, I don't want my kids to, at least for this one thing, have my kid participate. Like, this is a Supreme Court case? It just seems kind of weird.
Right, but then this is where Lori's counter-argument is, yeah, but then where do you draw the line? Do you draw the line
at the parents? Because we've already given parents
but I'm just
discretion.
saying, but how do they decide what curriculum they have to ask about?
Right.
That's all. I'm not. I don't care.
Right.
I don't fucking care.
Right.
That's the question. Is like, why is this the weird
right?
thing?
And I think what pissed me off is that I think I gave the exact right. Like, I drew the line where the line belongs, which is, here we have certain facts about the world, and here we have certain ambiguous moral claims by one side or the other, right? And, like, evolution is not an ambiguous moral claim, but the righteousness of, like, the righteousness of homosexuality and the legitimacy of, like, we can point to the fact of civic.
So does anything not science?
It would be to my preference that parents, again, something I've said 1,000 times, I don't think it fucking matters, actually. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that the child is
That's
going
why
to be
I said, I don't care.
indoctrinated one way or the other. Like, I don't think that this actually, you're not going to brainwash these fucking kids because they're mostly not paying attention. But, like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I think that my preference would be for parents to not give a shit what books their kids are reading and to trust their children to make up their minds. It gets fucking weird when kindergartners are being given books about gay marriage. Like, I maybe it is purely a homophobic response. I don't know. But, like, it seems obvious to me that it is weird to give 5-year-olds books about gay marriage. Because it just doesn't seem. It doesn't seem like a conversation that's worth having at that age.
Why are we having a conversation about any kind of marriage?
Entirely provocative on purpose.
Would you be okay if they just kind of did what this marriage stuff is a little above their age range? Why not talk about, like, friendship and, like, learning, like, you know, whatever kids are into at that age, and sharing, and just, like, very basic core.
I think the point is that it's sort of inconceivable to imagine a book about going to Uncle Bobby's wedding that's between Uncle Bobby and the girlfriend as being a political act. And it is sticking your head in the sand to insist that Uncle Bobby's wedding to his Mexican boyfriend isn't a political act.
What if in that classroom there is a kid with 2 mothers or 2 fathers, right? I mean, like, again, there has to be some flexibility, right? So, like, if that happened, like, the kids would not think of this as unusual. Like, oh, Timmy over there has 2 mothers or whatever, right? I don't know how prevalent that is now compared to when we were growing up, but maybe.
Yeah, I don't think most kids would bat an eye, right? I don't think it would be a big deal, and it would be on the Muslim family and the stuck-up Christian family to teach their children that, actually we don't agree with that lifestyle, and it would be shitty of them to say, I don't want to see you two together on the playground after school because of the message that it's sending to my child, right? Like that would be obviously completely unacceptable. But like, you can't tell me that it's not a political act to jam a book about gay marriage into a kindergarten classroom. Like, of course it is.
My nieces and nephews are they're in the Muslim school pipeline. I guess they're trying to avoid these kind of kid lessons. They're going to some sort of whatever. God knows what they're teaching them over there. Probably not.
Nothing good.
but they are also covering the core subjects, but they're also doing some Muslim stuff also on top. So, there are all these.
How young do these start?
It's like K through 12.
Wow.
Yeah, they have a whole thing.
Is this all of your nieces and nephews?
I mean, some of them are too young they're not at the K level. But one of them was my sister's kid. He was going to regular school, but it's like one of these like black middle schools, and a lot of teasing about the.
Is it like a historically black college university? Middle school.
But middle school, and there's a lot of attention about the shoes and the quality of shoes being worn, and if it's not to their liking, you're gonna get a lot of negative.
Wasn't this your experience as well?
This was my friend's. So my whole high school experience was dominoes. I would just go to work, and just go to the wrestling practice and go to work. I never interacted with them in high school. I just leave me alone. As soon as this school thing is done, I'll be happy. All of the people that I interacted with are like the assistant manager and the drivers and just that. I was like, all right, these people are normal. They're working, and so I never had any shoe interactions.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, the Muslim schools all, uniform.
Is there some sort of school choice initiative? Are they getting a break on tuition or what?
Yeah, I think there's something in Georgia with a camp, like some voucher thing, because there's some money that follows the kids, and they're like, I guess you can take, it's kind of siphoning off the money from the public school system so that they can use it for charter or religious schools or whatever. Although that would eventually undermine the public school system, it would collapse at some point. Yeah, so it seems to be like, what's the idea? Like, you're going to ruin this whole thing, and
ruin the whole thing.
The thing is, like, my siblings, when we came up through public school, right? And they're now like, fuck, that was a long time ago. Now I'm going to take my kids to private school and undermine the system that allowed us to learn. It's like, that was. Good luck. And I was like, what about the current version of you that's in high school? Like, don't you want to support?
Are they wrong though? Do the schools not suck in their area?
The schools do suck. Yeah, I think basically at the individual level, the best thing to do is whatever is the best thing to do. Like, I mean, some of my friends, they moved up to Alpharetta and Johns Creek and Sewanee where the school systems are better, so that way they can take them to public school. But if you're like in the city, you have to find some other way.
Yeah, and the other way is fucking madrasas.
Yeah, madrasa. Yeah, learn. I've anytime they talk religion stuff, I was like, I don't want to steer them away. Like, I actually want them to, whatever the parents want, So, but once they hit their teenage years, I'm like, I was going to say. I'm going to deviate them from...
You're going to be utterly unwilling
to... No. Well, they have to be like, I think, once they get to 10th grade and above, then like, it's mostly bullshit. Now, welcome to the fold. But not like at this age. This is impressionable years. They got to do the whole thing.
This is just you trying to recreate your situation.
That's right, yes. Yeah, I think it was the right amount of bullshit before you're like, okay. Because otherwise, they may resist, You have to time this right.
It's smart. Yeah. It's playing the long game.
The long con, yes. All right. Good night.
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.